I have suffered and dealt with the same kind of medical problem now afflicting my friend Michael Jackson. Because of my own experience with addiction to prescription medicines, I traveled to Mexico City, where I saw for myself that Michael was in desperate need of specialized medical attention.
This is very difficult for me, that Michael is my brother. I love him a great deal, but I cannot and I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small, innocent children.
He has made a great contribution to art, to music.
Everybody has so much respect for him because he's so talented, and his talent is so wonderful. It will never die. He will never die. He's amazing. Nobody touched Michael Jackson.
Right.
We have to stop the prejudice. We have to stop the hating. We have to stop living in fear of our own neighbors. That's for all the children of the world. I love you.
Take a minute to project yourself into Michael Jackson's shoes and view the world from his perspective. You'll quickly realize how daunting and frightening such an experience could be. To be constantly confronted by fans, camera lenses, flashing light bulbs, clicking shutters, and cameramen jostling for position must have been an extremely disorienting, stressful, and unnerving experience.
I've never, ever, ever seen anything like that, and I hope I will never see it again, because Michael was crushed. He actually fell on the platform. Now let me tell you this, if Michael wasn't in the shape that he is in, he would have stayed there.
It's a very, very telling thing to look at footage of Michael Jackson, because you begin to understand what it meant to live your life in the kind of media spotlight that he did.
We all need to know that we can at some point switch off and be ourselves and not be recognised and not have demands made on us. To be able to walk down the street would be a perfect scenario for someone like Michael Jackson. It tends to draw you inward because you can't escape, you can't be normal.
If you look, for example, at the footage of the ad hoc trip that he made with Uri Geller and David Blaine, we can see that immediately the press of bodies get so excited that Michael's actually knocked to the ground and he's physically threatened by this.
If you were very much an inward person anyway, it'd be very easy to take all these, take it on as a very personal attack, and for that to take you even further into that spiral and make you close away even more.
What you could be faced with when you're constantly mobbed, followed by screaming fans wherever you go, it can make people feel anxious, it can make people feel depressed, it can lead some people to sort of violent outbursts. It can do all sorts of different things to you on an emotional level.
If we look, for example, at a trip to Moscow to try and do something that any tourist would do, all he wants to do is to have a look at Red Square. Again, there's this frenzy that surrounds him, and he's thwarted in the most simple and innocent of ambitions.
Stardom is something that a lot of people dream about, and it seems a very easy life. In fact, it's a very lonely life with lots of temptations and the ability to make people paranoid as they're looking at others around them and saying, well, what do you want out of me? Why are you coming to me with this offer? What's in it for you? And a lot of hangers-on and what have you.
If people are always making a call on your life, you're always expected to behave in a certain way. It takes that control from you, and you almost become like you're acting out your life rather than living it.
When you are out there in the public arena constantly, it may be that he feels as though he has a reputation to live up to. He has to constantly perform. He's constantly under pressure, constantly under stress to make sure that he continues in the same way that he has done to date.
Everybody who's like a famous singer or pop star tries to manipulate the media. I mean, it's all down to popularity, really. That's where you get the money and the records.
Constantly in the public eye, it's always going to have its consequences, so I think he lived through the media, and the media in a way controlled his life.
Just wanting to better himself to become something that he just couldn't be, and I think that was part of his biggest problem.
Attention's something that we need to give and receive to be mentally well, and attention needs tend to sometimes get met negatively as well as positively, and then you become acclimatized to that environment where you're too much attention as well can be a bad thing. The brain's developed a very complex organ, and it's there to problem solve, to think things through, to find ways to find control and get needs met. If someone's constantly doing that for you, if things aren't being used, quite simply, neural connections are lost.
Take us straight in. Michael, why did you want to come take this off your face?
And you lose the ability to be able to do that, which can cause all sorts of mental problems. Can lead to depression, anxiety problems, problems with managing stress. Coping skills for life get diminished.
It's actually a very difficult life, and again, those who are more disciplined and have a solid foundation in terms of other aspects of their life are far more suited to it than those who, one would say, are carrying emotional baggage with them.
Michael Jackson achieved fame on a bigger scale than any other celebrity. His fame transcended all racial, national, political, and ethnic barriers. He appealed equally to members of both sexes. His appeal was global.
In 1988, Michael, for the first time, met Diana, Princess of Wales. And that must have been a big moment for him, because here was a kindred spirit.
Michael Jackson is known as the King of Pop, and Princess Diana is known as the public's princess. And so I wonder whether they had an affinity with one another.
Would you like to say a few words to your fans, Michael?
I love
Anything else? Happy to be here. How does it feel to be meeting the royalty tonight?
Very exciting.
Diana, Princess of Wales, was perhaps the only other public figure who lived a life under such intense media scrutiny. In 1988, Michael Jackson met Diana for the first time. Here, we see Michael having to take his place in the receiving line. It's noticeable that on this unique occasion, he is not the most important figure in the building.
They were both certainly followed by paparazzi an awful lot, by the media, by fans. They must have found it very, very difficult to have time to themselves, to be able to live a private life, so that everything that they do is documented and out there in the public.
She had to live with the same kind of media pressures that he did, and there would be an instant bond there where both could understand the realities of their situation. And in a way, he couldn't really communicate that to anyone else.
This is the historic footage of that first meeting. Michael was clearly relaxed, happy, and hugely enjoying the experience. The mutual attraction was understandable, as only someone like Diana could possibly begin to understand the pressures on Michael Jackson.
I think probably if you look at their lives, you can see a lot of parallels, or where he could see a lot of parallels. She was a very, very famous lady, always in the media attention, probably in a situation whereby she didn't quite feel that she was understood, that she was portrayed, that she was almost controlled, which was something that he would feel very much was the case for him.
Perhaps very isolated, perhaps caring for the underdog, perhaps not knowing who around them that they could trust. We have heard very much about sort of disruptive families.
Pepsi and Michael have had the opportunity to do a great lot of things together. But the best kind of things we do is help disadvantaged youth. So both of us, like I said,
Michael genuinely believed that he had a responsibility and a duty to help others who found themselves in difficulty. Michael's work on behalf of children was genuine charitable work, which raised huge sums.
The dollar was rising now, so get a little bit more. This is wrapped over here.
Princess Diana was obviously speculatively supposed to have a lot of eating disorders, the same kind of problems that he probably would have been able to relate to very much.
They both had public adoration, but perhaps privately they felt quite isolated.
Diana was to be a major influence on his life from this moment onwards. One other friend who played a big part in Michael's life was Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth was to prove good and faithful friend. She did a lot of very good work to help Michael through his life.
I think it's fair to say there was a very feminine aspect to Michael Jackson's persona, and I think that's one of the reasons why he found it so easy to forge friendships with women.
For Michael, female figures were very important to him. If you look at the relationship with his mother and father, it was the mother that he held more on a pedestal than the father, who, to some extent, he would have not blamed, probably too harsh a word, but would look back on and think were the cause of some of his underlying problems there. So females were quite important to Michael, and I think he felt he could relate to them and trust them even. Particularly females that were in the spotlight, because again he could draw a parallel to the way that they were treated and how he behaved and how he felt. There was definitely, obviously, a much more feminine aspect to Michael. We could tell that through the way that he reconstructed his face and his whole persona. Interestingly, though, apparently he had two voices. Now, again, this is speculation, but apparently when he was interviewed, he had the media voice, which was very effeminate, and then he had a much gruffer voice, which he would speak to staff with when he was in a position of authority. So that says quite a lot about his personality as well, that he felt that he had to have two different identities there, and sometimes it's very hard to decide or remember which one you're supposed to be in. It can get very confusing.
Michael began performing at a very early age. He was world famous by the age of 10.
If you think Michael Jackson really was forced to be an adult from the age of about 5, taking all the pressures, and child development's very important for the adult psyche. Basically, it sets about how you respond and how you behave in life.
Not being able to play, not being able to go out there and enjoy himself with friends. He's leading, I guess, an adult world as opposed to a childhood world.
He was thrust into this media goldfish bowl from really the age of 8 onwards. After that, the man enjoyed no privacy in any aspect of his life at any time, from the age of 8 till his death at the age of 50.
It takes sometimes an adult to reflect back and think, I want to get that time back, I want to make the changes, I want the childhood to be what I want it to be. And if you look at Michael Jackson's life, there's a lot of parallels to child behaviour, the spending, the excessive spending, the innocence in the way he spoke, and of course there's Neverland and the attraction to children and the way they behave and to want to be part of that.
What does a fun fair represent? It represents perhaps a magical hideaway. It represents fun, laughter. It represents excitement, things that perhaps Michael Jackson felt that he wasn't experiencing in his life.
If you look back, he suggests a lot that while he was a child, his father would call him ugly.
He always said he'd been abused by his father, which took the form of name-calling, undermining him, and also on occasion physical beatings.
And he was quite unsure about the way he was.
The parents are often the outlet and the target of the frustration of the child but it's not them that the child blames. They will typically blame themselves.
The pressure of fame and the loneliness that often goes with stardom was something that Michael found hard to cope with. He often spoke openly about his unhappiness.
The mask could have genuinely been a way for him to cover up as a sort of preceding the plastic surgery or as an addition to. It could have also been another way, a cry for attention, which, you know, he knew he wasn't a stupid man. He knew how to work the media. It would invariably get him attention, be it good or bad.
To understand who you are, who you're going to be, because you're moving from that transition from being a child to an adult, and exploring the world and what is the type of adult, or who are I going to be when I become an adult.
It is not surprising that Jackson found solace in the painkillers Valium, Xanax, and Ativan. By 1993, it was publicly admitted by Elizabeth Taylor that Michael was addicted to prescription drugs.
I have suffered and dealt with the same kind of medical problem now afflicting my friend Michael Jackson. Because of that, and because of our friendship, when Michael's doctor called to ask if I could help, I was glad to intervene. I traveled to Mexico City, where I saw for myself that Michael was in desperate need of specialized medical attention. Because of my own experience with addiction to prescription medicines, I was able to make a number of calls in search of the best and most appropriate treatment for Michael, and he is now undergoing such treatment in Europe. Out of respect for his privacy, which I know to be extremely important at this time, I have not spoken publicly about our movements or about Michael's exact location. And because of my regard for him and my concern for his health, I will continue to be silent. I will only repeat that I am a friend of Michael Jackson's, and I love him like a son, and I support him with all my heart.
Michael voluntarily entered a drug rehabilitation program. Another side effect of his condition was the onset of an eating disorder, which caused Michael to lose a considerable amount of weight.
Elizabeth Taylor was a child star, as was Michael Jackson, and so they had similar things happening in their lives from a very, very early age.
So for Michael, there was a natural bond there, and I think Elizabeth did a lot of very good work to help the man through his life. She understood the pressures he was under.
And I'm honored that the world appreciates my art. I'm very honored.
And she understood how important it was that she reached out and did something to help him. She also understood that it was necessary to explain to the world exactly what Michael was going through.
You know him well as a person. How great is he as a man?
Well, he's one of my closest friends, and we know more about each other probably than any two people. And I love him, and he loves me.
We have addiction because certain needs in our life are not being met or being met in an unhealthy way. There's something not right that you're searching for. You're searching for that high. Now, what tends to happen is if you follow one line, you become addicted to something and your needs still become unmet, things still haven't sorted themselves out, you start seeking it from other behaviours. You start searching for it in other ways.
Initially, when somebody would take prescription drugs, it may be that they get a sense of well-being as a result of that. But when somebody continually takes them and then becomes addicted to taking prescription drugs, it almost becomes the norm.
Breaking any drug habit, as anyone knows, even smoking, is very difficult. You have the physical addiction, and you have the psychological addiction. Psychological addiction says, I need this to cope with the pain from my stomach, the trauma of my childhood, the worries, the concerns, the paranoia.
If his attention needs, for example, are being met in an unhealthy way or not being met at all, then the link to hypochondrias there is a possibility, that the need for painkillers, the need for that attention that gives him, and could be linked to a form of personality disorder.
The stress brought on by the 1993 Jordan Chandler case and his mounting addiction caused Michael to cancel the remainder of his Dangerous World Tour. In 1993, LaToya Jackson decided to face the cameras and denounce her brother as a child molester. She held nothing back, and the world's media were treated to an astonishing tirade against Michael.
Well, I must tell you that this is very difficult for me, that Michael is my brother. I love him a great deal, but I cannot and I will not be a silent collaborator of his crimes against small, innocent children. And if I remain silent, then that means that I feel the guilt and the humiliation that these children are feeling, and I think it's very wrong.
All of us in times of adversity would look to our family to support us and to nurture us and to help us through these difficult times. And to be confronted with that must have been a catastrophic and a very, very heavy burden to bear.
He had very few people that he could trust. He had very few people that were close to him. Now, for a family member to come out and say that would have damaged him and make him withdraw even further.
It's very difficult for a person to face the accusation of being a child molester if it's the public, if it's the media that are saying that this is what has happened. For a family member to be saying that this is what has happened, I would imagine that would be heartbreaking.
I have seen checks payable to the parent of these children. And I don't know if these children were apparently bought to the parents by Michael or not. But I have seen these checks. And I've seen these checks through my mother. She's shown me these checks that Michael have written to these children, and it's for a great amount. And I'm not speaking pennies. The sums are a very, very large amount. And this is my first time talking about it, and I never want to speak about it. I never want to say anything about it. But I think it's sad because I am a victim myself, and I know what it feels like. And these kids are going to be scarred for the rest of their life, and I don't want to see any more innocent small children being affected this way. I love Michael very dearly, but I feel even more sorry for these children because they don't have a life anymore. They don't.
I think, unfortunately, it is something that he had become accustomed to from quite a young age. He was 7 of 9 children, so he's used to have to fight his way out of these things. But having said that, for a family member to come out in the public and speak out against you like that would be incredibly damaging.
Now you stop and you think for 1 second and you tell me what 35-year-old man is going to take a little boy and stay with him for 30 days and take another boy and stay with him for 5 days in a room and never leave the room. How many would take little kids and do that are 9, 10, 11 years old? I love my brother, but it's wrong. I don't want to see these kids hurt. I've been hurt by it too. My father molested me sexually, and I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels. And to this day, this is my husband, and he can vouch for this. I will not have a relationship with him because of that. But I love him dearly, but I cannot. Perhaps one day I will come to terms with it, and I will be able to. But for now, I can't do it. And that's what I don't want to see happen to these little kids, because I know what it feels like in the heart. And it's a very sad situation. It really is. You have no idea what it feels like.
This has been going on since 1981. There's been 2 major kidnap attempts on LaToya that were stopped, that were paid and financed by Michael Jackson.
Eventually, Michael and LaToya were reconciled, and peace was restored.
When he was interviewed on several occasions, he was very open in his relationship with children. Now, whether that was done as some kind of guise to the actual situation, I'm not sure, but my opinion would be that, yes, his want to be with children was innocent. It was a chance for him to get back the childhood that he lost.
I just think that the focus just shifted a lot. So he was just a victim of people's trying to bring him down, I guess.
He didn't understand that sleeping with children wasn't the right thing to do. He just saw it as being a bit of a boy time thing, and he was having friends round to stay.
And people, normally what people don't understand, they tend to, you know, call it something else, or, you know, he was just different, he was just weird, but he was Michael Jackson.
And he felt a certain affinity to children like he did with animals, in the respect that they didn't judge him. Most of the time they wouldn't. He could trust them. They were very open, they were very black and white, and he could just be himself. He didn't have to take on an identity of any form.
I think the press and the media probably has a lot to answer for. He was tried under a court of law and found not guilty, and so for me that means that he was not guilty.
The fact that he was subsequently cleared by a court of law must have lifted a huge weight from his shoulders.
It must be quite an isolating experience to feel that you can't trust the people around you, to feel that you don't have confidants, that you can disclose information to. It must be very difficult.
It was suggested that just about anybody he came into contact with would end up suing him. So he would have been very much always on guard with what he could say, what he could do, which would have sort of changed his whole identity, and he even probably would have ended up not even knowing his identity himself. That would always be the risk.
In the late 80s, the whole structure of Michael's face appeared to change. It has been speculated that he underwent frequent nasal surgery, a forehead lift, thinned lips, and cheekbone enhancement.
Michael Jackson has clearly changed his appearance over the years. In the celebrity world, it has become the norm, I think, to deny that a person has had plastic surgery.
Several speculations as to what's behind his plastic surgery. You could take the fact that he was constantly seeking to change his persona, change his perception of himself and what others viewed of himself as well.
It may be because they want to remain on the pedestal that, as Joe Public put them on, so that it doesn't seem as though they are seeking perfection in any way, which is perhaps how we might see their cosmetic surgery.
If he was constantly seeking something that wasn't right in his life, it was almost like an unmet need. Something wasn't right, so he would go and have something fixed. He would come back and still there'd be something there that wasn't right in his life, and he would go back and try and reinvent.
There is a term for this, which is body dysmorphic disorder.
It could have been something about control, about you spoke about not having the ability to trust others in his life, control taken from him very much from the media. So that could have been an aspect of that as well. It was something that he could do and he could keep to himself, and he had full control over it.
These alterations were accompanied by a period of severe weight loss, which led to the inevitable speculations that Michael Jackson was anorexic.
I guess it could be that he's trying to stay in the headlines, trying to ensure that he stays in the public eye, that people are wondering, you know, is it true, is it not?
If Michael's feeling was that he was ugly, there's no reason to stop him once he's got his fortune made to having plastic surgery. It may also explain this strange manifestation of being seen in public wearing a mask.
Michael could be a shrewd political operator. He famously joined the crusade led by the Reverend Al Sharpton and made some very outspoken comments concerning attitudes towards black artists in the music industry.
And we want the artists to be free. We don't want the companies bigger than the artists. We want the people respected and the stars that we make stars to shine in the galaxy for us. We were already off the wall, and we coming off our seats to stand up for justice in the music industry.
He ignited a very public campaign which targeted Sony Records.
This is very important because throughout the years, black artists have been taken advantage of completely. And it's time now that we have to put a stop to this incredible, incredible injustice. And like Mrs. Sharpton was saying, people from James Brown to Sammy Davis Jr., some of the real pioneers that that inspired me to be the entertainer that I am. These artists are always on tour because if they stopped touring, they would totally go broken. And it's been, the record companies really, really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists.
He was very outspoken and he criticised Tommy Mottola, the head of Sony, on very, very personal grounds and accused Tommy of being a racist, which I'm sure Tommy isn't. But Michael felt so strongly on that issue that he had to come out and make that statement.
Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
Now, there was a lot of bad blood between Michael and Sony, and Michael certainly milked his position for all it was worth, helped by Al Sharpton. And what it actually resulted in were members of the public beginning this curious boycott of Sony.
Sony sucks! 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 Jackson is this way, and whoever else, artists that are on their label that are being sucks! Sony sucks! Sony sucks! I want to hear the guys in the back.
We feel it's an amazing album, and we feel that Sony has deliberately sabotaged the record, and we're here to make our point, and we're going to boycott anything that has to do with Sony. We're not going to go to Sony movies, we're not going to buy Sony music, we're not going to buy Sony hardware, Sony DVDs, and that's what we're going to do, and that's why we're here.
So it shows you some of the power that Michael Jackson actually wielded, and the fact that he could be a very effective political campaigner if he chose to do so.
During the course of the 90s, Michael's skin grew noticeably paler, and eventually he was diagnosed as suffering from vitiligo and lupus, which fortunately was found to be in remission. These illnesses conspired to make Michael very sensitive to sunlight, and as a result, he took to wearing a hat and carrying an umbrella. We can see the trademark umbrella in Trilby in the historic meeting between Michael and Nelson.
I think for him, he genuinely could relate to Nelson Mandela and the problem with racism.
When he goes to South Africa, Nelson Mandela himself takes the time to address the press and to describe his admiration for Michael Jackson.
What I think he was able to do quite well is take himself out of a situation, and he didn't associate himself almost with being in a group. He could almost isolate himself pretty much and put himself in a box and see the world from a different perspective and himself from another one.
And I'm very happy indeed to be able to host him, even for just a few minutes. And he has made a great contribution to art the music. And I'm very happy that he is in our country.
It is my pleasure. It is my honor to be here in South Africa. I love you people very much. I've had the time of my life here. I've had so much fun. I hate to leave. And I'm definitely looking for a home here to buy, because I would love to spend the rest of my life here.
Sometimes when people feel dissatisfied with something in their lives, they want to run from it. And avoidance is a huge strategy of coping for many people. So if there is something happening in someone's lives where they feel, actually, I'm not very comfortable here, I don't feel at home here, shall we say, then it may be that they want to avoid that place and want to run away from it, I guess.
And we are definitely coming in January. And this is a wonderful, lovely man, and I love Nelson Mandela very much. And thank you for all your hospitality and all your love. Thank you very much.
You want it on the TV?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay then.
Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, do you know where you would like to buy a house?
Have you thought of composing a song about our president?
Yes, very much. I'm working on it now.
When?
I was working on it last night.
He would have disputed that he tried to change his colour, as we know. I think that was all built into the whole, like with the plastic surgery, he just wanted to change himself. Now, whether that meant putting a mask or changing the form of his face, there's very little in between. Changing his colour was more about changing who he was, I think, than actually deliberately changing his race. It's more about making himself look very different.
I think you'd have to be a very, very cynical person indeed not to believe that Michael was involved in charity for the best possible motive. He genuinely wanted to help and felt he had a duty to help.
When he went out to Russia, the state honored him for the work he did for charity. He continued to do this work at a time when he was not always in the best shape himself.
From the media reports and from what I have seen of Michael Jackson, I would say that he comes across as a very gentle, sensitive and caring person. And somebody who cares for the underdog. I would say that he was interested in assisting charities because he wanted to do good.
Everybody wants to be seen to be doing work for charity, and inevitably the cynic in us suggests that some people do it in order to raise their profile.
He liked to stand himself out as an idol and as a king of pop and liked to build himself up, but he didn't really play the games that the celebrities played. He was quite individual in the way he approached that. So I wouldn't imagine that he would have gone along just because it was the way that celebrities were expected to behave.
There was no need for Michael Jackson to raise his profile. He was already the most famous man on the planet.
There was always an element in him that liked to do something that people wouldn't expect him to do. He was always looking for that shock factor.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Michael Jackson and Uri Geller to the pitch of Exeter City Football Club.
applied throughout his life, through changing the way he looked, through wearing the mask, through dangling the baby out of it. I mean, whether that was intentional or not, we don't know, but he always did things that people wouldn't expect, and that was reflected in his music and his dancing and everything else.
If you listen to the speech, for example, he gives at Exeter Football Club, you can see how passionate he is about the need to do charitable work for children. He genuinely believed that he had a responsibility and a duty to help them.
Sadly, we live in a state of fear. Every day we hear of war on the news, on the radio, and television. In the newspapers, always of war. We hear of nations hurting each other, of neighbors hurting each other, of families hurting each other, and of children killing each other. We must learn to live and love each other before it's too late. We have to stop. We have to stop the prejudice. We have to stop the hating. We have to stop living in fear of our own neighbors. That's for all the children of the world. I love you.
Michael Jackson was an irreplaceable phenomenon.
He influenced music, I think, the most. Yeah, of all the artists around, he influenced it the most.
It was modern and it was old at the same time, and it's just really inspiring.
It's pretty awesome, and it always wants to make you jump around, and it's just really positive, you know?
He combined into one single person the creative energies which would normally come from a whole troupe of artists. He was a world-class entertainer. He composed immortal songs. He sang them brilliantly, and he also created amazing dance moves which were totally unique and bore his own unique hallmark.
I grew up on his music.
Yeah, we all grew up on his music.
His dancing and his music. I mean, he contributed a lot to dance as well, you know? He was just amazing.
Videos like Thriller and that were really, really amazing, weren't they? They really changed the face of music forever.
I just think it's just got such recognised tracks like Billie Jean, and you know, you just can't beat them, like the way they're done and the way he sort of performs them as well. I think he makes the songs.
And his concerts are perfect, really. And he was very special.
An innovative dancer, and again very influential, wasn't he? Made a big difference to a lot of people and changed music, really.
Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
We feel that Sony has deliberately sabotaged the record. We're going to boycott anything that has to do with Sony.
He has made a great contribution to art, to music.
This is a wonderful, lovely man, and I love Nelson Mandela very much. And thank you for all your hospitality and all your love.
He's one of my closest friends, and we know more about each other probably than any two people. And I love him, and he loves me.
He was a legend. Love Michael Jackson.
In my heart forever!
He's a star. Love the beats that he produces. Fantastic.
Influential, very clever, very good, an incredible artist.
Michael is a special person, and I think that he made his career from own and from himself.
I love the music of Michael Jackson. Yeah, I think he's an icon, and it's very sad that he's died.
I'm from South Korea, but my country is sad about his death.
Everybody has so much respect for him because he's so talented, and his talent is so wonderful. It will never die. He will never die. He's amazing. Can nobody touch Michael Jackson? Right.
It's no surprise that the news of his death moved the whole world. We will all miss you, Michael.